This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Week number 2, always one of my favorite weeks of the NFL season because we've got some data to react to, but also you will see overreactions as well. And I think maybe we're getting a bit of that for week 2. Talked about that a bit on Tuesday with my full slate breakdown going game by game there, but still some lingering games where I think lines may have moved potentially too much. Our job today is talk to Riley Thomas, pick his brain on his read for week 1, letting you kind of know how Riley is deciphering what he saw in week 1 versus overreacting versus underreacting and things like that, and then go through 3 key games across week 2 slate and see where Riley's seeing value at FanDuel Sportsbook. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Riley Thomas. You can find him on X at _Riley8. He is at FanDuel Research, FanDuel.com/research, a writer for us covering MLB, WNBA. He's covering the NFL, college football stuff. Of course, you've heard him talk college here on the show a bunch. Riley, a busy guy as always. Welcome to week 2. How you doing today?
Doing great. Feels good to have just football back across the board. Back to just rotting on my couch watching football all Saturday, all Sunday. So love that that's back.
There are worse ways to live our lives. Now, the one issue I've had is that I get so excited that I kind of wear myself down and I get a little tired. Now, I know I convinced you to try Sludge Cup, which is a cup of coffee with 2 shots of espresso in it. Have you made the Sludge Cup a regular part of your weekly tradition, or is that a little bit too much heart attacky for you to kind of dive in those waters?
I haven't had it since I discovered it through you. I don't know when that was. It was a while ago, but honestly, you reminded me of it. I want to try it again. I really liked it, but I drink a lot of coffee, so I can handle the caffeine. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm considering it for today because I want to make sure I'm fresh because it's not just the Commanders Packers tonight, but also there is a truck race at Bristol that I really want to watch. So I need to have like full attention. I need like my Sunday NFL Red Zone 4-box on YouTube kind of level of attention for tonight. And I'm not typically there on a Thursday, so I might need to dabble in those waters after the show today.
Yeah, I can't blame you. This part of the week after like all of the, trying to get everything out for the football weekend and all that, kind of hit a lull here. So
yeah,
probably a good plan.
Sludge Cup season is here for sure. Thank you, Dan Campbell, for your inspiration as always. Today, as mentioned, we're going to break down the week 2 NFL slate, let you know where Riley is seeing value for this week to get you set for the second slate of the year. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Our week 3 college football show already posted with Ben Stevens of VSiN. He broke down his thoughts on the biggest games across week 3, where you're seeing value there. I also broke down my thoughts on all 16 NFL games for this week. Both those up on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, but also the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. Over there, leave us a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed. The Covering the Spread podcast feed, 5-star rating if you like what you hear, and subscribe there as well. We appreciate everybody tuning in as always. FanDuel's getting you ready for kickoff with an offer you won't want to miss. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style, FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is finally here. The only question is, are you ready to play? Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only, $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chattanooga, Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Help Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Riley, coming off week 1, we always want to make sure we're reacting to new info, important new info, without overreacting. So I wanted to ask you, what steps do you kind of follow in order to make sure you're not going too far as to take with your take in reacting to what you saw in week 1?
Yeah, for me, most of it is just going to be just like looking at the coaching staff, personnel, stuff like that. Because I think the Bengals, for example, is like something that I can look at in week 1 that's a direct example of this is something I'm not going to buy into. I'm not going to overreact. So
yeah,
their secondary, they did a really good job of, even though they allowed almost 300 passing yards in the week 1, they didn't give up that much per passing attempt. So like the deep shots weren't there or anything like that, but you're talking about pretty much the same starting secondary. They still have issues at cornerback, like Cam Taylor-Britt struggled really bad in week 1, stuff like that. I don't expect their secondary to continue to put up like, I think they're like top 12 right now. And when you look at like expected, obviously, like expected points added per drop back allowed, stuff like that, like that's probably not going to continue. They have too many like holes in that secondary. I mean, coming into the year, that was probably one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. So just personnel and coaching stuff. I mean, they did make a change at defensive coordinator, but I mean, unless this is like one of the best DCs in football, which I don't think anybody thinks that of him, those numbers probably aren't going to keep up. For me, I think the trickiest part early on like this is trying to get a feel for like rookies or like young players in their second, third year kind of breaking out, because we all know young players are inconsistent. Like you don't really know if it's going to keep up. Maybe somebody like I thought Genty for the Raiders looked good last week, but the line was so bad that maybe the numbers weren't there. But things like that, it's like, is he going to end up being a difference this year? Is the line going to be too bad? So I think the toughest part is just getting a feel for the young players. But if you see major personnel changes, they're doing different stuff with the X's and O's, I think you can buy into improvement there.
Well, I think the key thing, you're talking about the Bengals, and it's always important to consider like who that team faced, because like that's a key thing. And you're talking about, okay, I'm not going to buy into the Bengals, and part of that's probably because they didn't face an elite passing offense. They didn't say elite on purpose because Joe Flacco, that was a mistake, but like, they're not facing Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson when they're out there. And to me, that's an important thing for this week too, because I talked about buying into overreactions and stuff like that. My 2 favorite spots revolved around teams that didn't do all that hot in week 1. And it was because they were in tough spots on the road, tough divisional teams. So I think that kind of factoring in, okay, what'd you do and who'd you face? That's something we want to make sure we're keeping front of mind always in week 2.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
One of those teams that had a tough spot last week was the Detroit Lions. Let's talk about them. In our first game here for week number 2, they are now back at home and taking on the Chicago Bears. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, this spread continues to lengthen, which makes me happy. Someone who has 4.5 in hand. It's now 6.5. Lions are favored. Total in this game is at 47.5. Now, Caleb Williams did start hot in week 1. Got a touchdown late to try to rally, and then some clock mismanagement prevented him getting the ball back there. But the Bears did come up short. What's your view of Williams and the Bears in this Ben Johnson revenge game, Riley?
Yeah, so for me, I think this is one of the most interesting spreads of the week. This feels like a number we would have saw a year ago, honestly, where we're getting around like 7 or so.
Yeah.
And there's just so many different things about both teams. Like you mentioned, you said you got it at 4.5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, 4.5 for me would feel more appropriate. So I'm leaning with a Bears cover just because I think this is getting too high. But I mean, I thought from what we saw when Caleb looked improved last week, I mean, I'm buying it. And I think part of that is, of course, Ben Johnson is now calling the plays. Rome Odunze is still a guy that I think is going to take a leap this year. And just in terms of like usage and stuff last week, targets, all that kind of stuff, he did have like receiver 1 level volume. So I think he'll eventually make a leap here. But the biggest thing with the Lions that I'm concerned with, where I do think they're going to take a step back, is that interior offensive line. I mean, it was a tough spot last week, but their interior offensive line was just honestly horrible. Like, it could not hold up. I mean, it was constant interior pressure. It was, you can't run the ball. And we all know running the ball has been a staple for them. And you get into situations where you're giving up interior pressure with a guy that can't really move in Jared Goff. I mean, that's not going to spell success either. He typically needs pretty clean pockets or some kind of pocket. So overall, I'm just worried about that interior offensive line for the Lions. I'm not sure if they'll get the run game going. Chicago, they I know it's only one game, but right now they're allowing the 6th lowest rush success rate. They had a good run defense last year as well. So I don't know if that run's really going to work for Detroit. They also run a lot of man coverage. You face, an offensive guru in Ben Johnson, and you just want to run man coverage. Chances are he's probably going to cut you up a little bit or, get you on some big plays. I just don't know if the run's going to work for Detroit. And if that's the case, then I think it's going to be pretty close here.
Yeah, I mentioned I got it at 4.5, and a move across 6 is an important move because although 3 and 7 are like the most important key numbers in the NFL, 6 is a number that games do fall on pretty often. Now, the 6.5 is a pretty heavy 6.5. It's -118 for the Bears, but like that's an impactful move. So I understand why you'd have interest there, buying low in the Bears, and I do agree. Like Williams, although there were bad spots and there were some really bad misses, there were some bright spots too. Yeah. And I believe in Ben Johnson. I do think that he is a guy who can fix Caleb Williams. I didn't see it enough to like back off of the Lions when it was 4.5, but at 6.5, I understand why you'd want to buy in to Chicago at that number.
Yeah, I think another big piece of this I forgot to mention is just the Lions pass rush last week really struggled. And I do think Chicago is going to have a good offensive line this year. So, you pair those two things together too. And, if he's comfortable back there, chances are Caleb could look good again.
Yeah. And he gets to play in a dome, which is a good thing for him, given how much wind he played in last year. That does help him as well. So Riley back in the Bears, +6.5, -118, a lean for him in that one. Let's talk now about a really fun game on Sunday afternoon, the marquee game across the entirety of week number 2. That is the Eagles taking on the Chiefs in a Super Bowl rematch. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook line shifting towards the Eagles. They're at -1.5. Their money line -116. The Chiefs at -102. Total in this game is at 46.5. As of now, we don't know Xavier Worthy's status for this week, and the Chiefs offense once again shorthanded. No Rashee Rice here once again. Do you think they can still manage to avenge the Super Bowl loss to Philadelphia, or is the movement towards Philadelphia justified in this game?
As much as it pains me as a Cowboys fan, I'm all over the Eagles this week in this. I think they'll cover. Last time I looked, the Chiefs team total was 23.5, and I like the under on that too. Just there's offensive line stuff with Kansas City that concerns me. Of course, Philly has a dominant pass rush. Even without Jalen Carter for an entire game, they still had the 6th best pass rush grade over at Pro Football Focus among teams in week 1. So the whole left side of Kansas City's offensive line, you have Kingsley, I think it's pronounced Sua Mataia.
Yes, nailed it.
I nailed it for once. But he last year he had Pro Football Focus gave him a 30.5 pass block grade. Week 1 he had a 56.9 pass block grade, and then of course they're starting a rookie at left tackle in Josh Simmons. Philly's probably going to just throw a ton of stuff on that left side of the offensive line. You get Jalen Carter back in the mix. That's just better for everybody involved. So I think that pass rush could really eat up this week. And then on top of it, you're mentioning the receiver situation. Rashee Rice. We'll see on Xavier Worthy, but if I had to guess, I bet he doesn't play. So then you're down 2 receivers. The pass rush is eaten. I just don't know if Mahomes is going to be able to do much in this. And obviously doubting him is never a good idea. But, logically, I guess I'll doubt him this week. Because like last week, I thought Dak Prescott played pretty well. Yeah. And Dallas still had only 5.5 yards per passing attempt. So we know Philly's secondary is legit. And then just kind of looking at the other side of the ball where we're leaning into this Eagles cover, Kansas City secondary did not play well last week. They gave up over 300 passing yards, 9.4 yards per passing attempt. Granted, the Eagles passing game didn't do much either, but I still believe in what they have. We know Jalen Hurts is, we know A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, all of that. It's going to be a productive passing game. It always is. So just considering how bad Kansas City secondary looks, I think we'll see more success from the Eagles throwing the ball as well.
Looking at this Eagles defense, to me, their biggest issue is that number 2 cornerback slot. And we kind of saw that at times last week. CeeDee Lamb able to get open a lot, didn't catch it, but he got open a lot, operating they were kind of isolating him, sacrificing George Pickens effectively. The Chiefs can't do that. Like, are you going to put you going to scheme up plays for Tyquan Thornton, like deep shots for Tyquan Thornton to beat that number 2 corner? Probably not. And that's a big concern for me. I do have the Chiefs as slight favorites in this game, but like I can't bet that. That's with Xavier Worthy assumed in. Once I take him out, probably a true pick for me. And from a matchup perspective, I do think things favor Philadelphia, both because of the defensive line you alluded to, but also because the Chiefs, in my mind, can't exploit that big weakness on the Eagles' defense.
Yeah, I mean, they're just too thin. I mean, if they had a full, healthy receiving core, it'd be a lot different. But if you don't have both of those guys, it's going to be tough, especially if you don't have that much time to throw.
Yeah, so the team total that Riley alluded to is under 23.5 for Kansas City. That is -118, but also like in Eagles, -1.5. That is -105. Got a battle of a couple of 2024 first-round picks at quarterback on Sunday Night Football. That is the Falcons taking on the Vikings. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Vikings here by 3.5. This was 4.5, has since tightened. Andrew Van Ginkel concerns, and also just, I think, some buyback there on Atlanta. Total in this game is at 44.5. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy trailed for the majority of that Bears game, but then did rally, to his credit, to get the win there. How are you viewing the Vikings entering this game as 3.5-point favorites?
Yeah, Minnesota is just a weird team for me. Last year, all year, I'm like, oh, they're going to take a step back. And then they eventually did in the playoffs, but they just kept finding ways to win. It was the exact same last week. I don't know what happened going into the fourth quarter. I wasn't even paying attention anymore, and then I see they score a touchdown. Interesting. And then they were just like, they can't stop. Just overall, the defense, Brian Flores, obviously that's a unit I'm just always going to believe in. So I got a lot of more offensive line pass rush talk for you with this pick. I like Atlanta under 20.5 on their team total in this. So of course the Falcons are without their starting right tackle, Caleb McGarry. So that leaves Elijah Wilkinson filling in the spot. He's never really put up any great numbers or anything like that in terms of if you want to look at like Pro Football focused pass blocking grade. Last week he put up a 56.1 there, so pretty mediocre. And then of course that right tackle spot for Atlanta is more important than everybody else because they have a left-handed quarterback, so that's the blind side. And you did mention Andrew Van Ginkel. He's in concussion protocol, so we don't really know on him. But Minnesota still has Jonathan Grenard. I was encouraged by what Dallas Turner did last week as well. He had 7 quarterback hurries all of last season, and he had 2 last week. So, hey, he showed some improvement rushing the passer. So, and we know he's talented, so I wouldn't be surprised if he could produce a little bit if Van Ginkel can't go. But overall, I'm just concerned about that right side holding up for Atlanta. And then on top of it, the Falcons couldn't really run the ball last week. They put up 2.5 yards per rushing attempt. Minnesota gave up only 3.1 yards per rushing attempt to Chicago's running backs. Really, the only success they were giving up on the ground was Caleb Williams scrambling. Outside of that, the Bears couldn't really run it. So just between that, I don't know if Penix is going to have that much time to launch it downfield, so you might see a lot of short passes. Don't know if the run's going to work. All of this, for me, points to a lot of really tough third downs for the Falcons, considering they converted only 6 of 15 third downs last week. And then on top of it, the Vikings only allowed the Bears to convert on 3 of their 12 third downs. Minnesota also allowed the second lowest third down conversion rate a season ago. I just think third downs could be something Minnesota just dominates in this. Obviously, if you get into a bunch of third and longs, I'm talking about their pass rush. That could really win the day for them. But you don't have much success on third down. You're probably not going to score much. So overall, that's my feel on this game for Atlanta's offense.
Yeah, that team total you alluded to for Atlanta, under 20.5 is -115 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I am projecting both Drake London and Darnell Mooney in as of right now for this game, and I still have this total of 44.1 overall, so I agree with you. We're probably not going to see a ton of points in this game, and a lot of that comes down to the Minnesota defense, but also these skill guys, although Mooney and London sound like they're going to play, they're not 100%. And shoulders matter a lot for receivers. You can see guys struggle for an entire year when it's a shoulder injury. And I do worry about that. Cause if you're trying to sell me on Atlanta, the key selling point is their skill guys are very good and they're pretty banged up right now. You mentioned the Caleb McGarry injury too. Wilkinson, it was not a guy who probably should be a starter, kind of a swing tackle sort of guy. Now he's a blindside protector for Michael Penix. That's pretty scary. And Penix made magic with his legs last week. That's not something he does. Typically, he is one of the has historically been, I know he ran like a great 40 time, but he's not been a mobile quarterback ever since all the knee injuries in college. So I'm skeptical that continues. So I agree that like, I'm just not expecting a ton of points in this game. And my Minnesota defense against this Atlanta offense, given the injuries both on the line and at receiver, I think that's a big part of why I'm skeptical we see a lot of points on Sunday night.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so Riley is on the under 20.5 for the Falcons team total. That is -115. So we broke down the 3 big games across week 2. Now, Riley, I'm going to open up the board for you. Where else is seeing value across week 2 at FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, I'm looking at the 49.5 total for the Jaguars and Bengals. I like the over here. A big piece of this is just I expect it to be a pretty quick pace game. Brandon Gadula over at FanDuel Research, he has this with the 6th quickest adjusted pace of the week. And totally agree with that. I think it's going to be pretty heavy passing games for both teams. I think we could see a lot of success through the air for both teams. Already kind of talked about Cincinnati's secondary earlier. Not really something I'm believing in. Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. couldn't really get it done last week, but I'm not going to just expect that to take a huge step back based off of one game. There was just a lot of stuff where I expected to improve this week. For example, Pro Football Focus gave Lawrence a 26.7 passing grade on attempts of 20 or more yards last week.
Oof.
He had an 88.7 grade there in that situation last year. So it's like we know he's not that bad throwing it deep. And then like you have Thomas catching 1 of 7 targets. He had -54 receiving yards over expectation. So it's just like, man, like nobody is this bad. This is not going to keep up. And then I'm just mentioning like Cincinnati has a vulnerable secondary. I think DJ Turner is a good cornerback. But I mean, he's shorter than Brian Thomas. He's probably going to match up with him, but he's shorter. He's giving up, I think he's almost like 25 pounds lighter. So he has the speed to keep up with Thomas, but he's just not as big. Brian Thomas is like one of my just biggest plays of the week across the board, whatever you want in player props, DFS, anything. I think he'll get back to the usual this year. Part of that too, virtually the same secondary with Cincinnati. They allowed the second most deep yards per target last year. So we know, the secondary has struggled against deep shots. But overall, I just expect Jacksonville's deep passing attack to take a big step forward this week. And then mentioning the whole week 1 stuff, is Cincinnati's passing game going to be as bad as it was last week? Probably not. I mean, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, like we all know what that is. And then Jaguars secondary looked a lot better, but they're playing Carolina. Bryce Young looked horrible. Travis Hunter wasn't out there. I mean, he played 6 snaps on defense, so it's not like, he came out there and dominated. So I'm still thinking that this cornerback room for Jacksonville is a little vulnerable. But Jacksonville gave up the most expected points added per dropback last year. So, that paired with what the Bengals have in their passing game, I think, we'll see the usual from Cincy. On top of it, they couldn't throw it downfield last week because of Cleveland's pass rush, obviously. Yeah. I mean, Myles Garrett, everybody deals with that. That's not something that most teams can replicate. Jacksonville just doesn't have the same pass rush. So Burrow should get a lot more time. And if that's the case, I don't think the secondary is good enough to hold up.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pass rush last week. They lost Lucas Patrick early in that game, and that's always tough. Losing an offensive lineman in the middle of the game, you have to readjust on the fly and stuff like that. That's tough. And we talk a lot about, or there's been a lot of talk this week about the Bengals in September. Last week, I don't care because they were on the road playing in pretty heavy wind speeds, lost a guard in the middle of that game against a very good defense.
Yeah.
And you look back at last year, that was T. Higgins in the first 2 games. They scored 33 in his first game back. Look at the year before that, Burrow coming off a calf injury. Year before that, Burrow coming off an appendectomy. Year before that, Burrow coming off an ACL.
Yep.
This is a way different situation. I think they're going to bounce back in a big way. So sounds like you like the over because the Bengals defense and the Jaguars offense hitting its stride. I like the Bengals offense to do work here. Personally need them to cover as well. Cover the 3.5 at -115. So from a DFS perspective, would love a back and forth game here. But I think that overall buying this Bengals offense to me does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned how bad they've been to start seasons. And I mean, if anything, there was some stuff I saw out of them last week that I was like, oh, wow, it's a little better. Their first drive was really good last week.
Yeah.
It was really good. And that I can't remember them putting together a drive that clean to start a season in a long time. Like my brother is a huge Bengals fan, and he was like over the moon that they showed like any form of what they usually are that fast.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, they'll be fine.
I love it. All right, so Riley is on the over for that game, 49.5 minus 105 for the Bengals and Jags. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. As mentioned, college football show for week 3 already up with Ben Stevens. Tomorrow, talking some player props with Aiden Cotter of FanDuel Research. That'll be up on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page, but also on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. So go subscribe, both those places. Leave us a thumbs up on YouTube and a 5-star rating on the Covering the Spread podcast feed as well. Riley, appreciate the time as always. Appreciate the offensive line and defensive line talk as well. Glad that translates over to the NFL. Good luck to you in week 2. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
You can find Riley on X at _Riley8. I am on X at JimSannes and also on Threads at Jim.Sannes. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets for NFL Week 2. Back again tomorrow to break down player props for the slate. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.